So our theme for this Ango is practicing non-knowing, intimacy with self, other, and world. And I'm going to have some intentionality around breaking up the Ango period, the 3-month period, into those 3 themes, right? Self for the first month, other for the second month, and world for the 3rd month. And so my talks will be focused on that. And I've kind of got a koan for each one of those 3 that will help to frame my sharing around those 3 different aspects of practice. Each month is going to look like I'll give, out of each of the 4 weeks, I'll give 2 Dharma talks, and Shoin will give 1 Dharma talk. And then the 4th one will be a group sharing on the specific non-knowing theme of that month. So in 4 weeks from now, it'll be a group session, and everyone can share your practices of non-knowing of self for the 1st month, and then non-knowing of other for the 2nd month, and world for the 3rd month. Okay, so I think that's it's a nice way to just give a little bit of a structure, to the Ango period. And I've had several people share that they're going to apply that to their own practice, really, really closely. So I invite you to do that if you'd like to have that focus through the course of the next 3 months, or but you don't have to. It's just a way of working with it. Yeah. These 3, they're very interconnected. Yeah. Because our Zen understanding is that self is not separate from other, is not separate from world, that truly it is the one body that is alive in each moment. They're really just different ways of working with the same thing. So not knowing of self is one angle in, not knowing of other is another angle in, but it's the same thing. And not knowing world, intimacy with world, is another angle in. So it's really a rich overall subject, and it's not it's one theme. Yeah, I just want to appreciate the unity of the theme. It really is the one investigation. Okay. Okay, so welcome Amy and Arthur. Let's take a little moment. Okay, so we'll go into our initial meditation period, and we'll go a little bit longer. Let's go till 20 after, so we'll do a 12-minute period, and just really connect with your body, your posture, paying meticulous attention to your inner experience of body, space, sensation. Okay. Bring your attention to the feeling and to the hearing senses. Shift away from the verbal senses, all those words going on in your head, and the visual sense. Okay, deactivate, neutralize the visual sense. And don't dwell so much in the verbal. And really move into absorption, into the oral sense, the hearing sense, and the feeling sense. Okay. Practice this way. Feel free to relax your posture if needed. Make yourself comfortable. I'll share some Dharma words. Non-knowing, practicing non-knowing, practicing non-knowing, intimacy with the self. So we have these three aspects of non-knowing, or practicing intimacy, that we'll be working with. Non-knowing, intimacy with self, intimacy with other, and intimacy with world. The root koan, or the root question for non-knowing, practicing intimacy with the self, is who am I? Okay. The root question for non-knowing other is who are you? And the root question for non-knowing of world is, what's that? So we have some nice koans which really express these three questions. So I'll take up this first one now, because we're looking at non-knowing self, intimacy with the self. Okay. So I'll talk about two specific kind of koans that we have in our tradition. And most of you have heard of these before. And I'm also going to be repeating some of the words that I shared at the session back on Saturday. So some of you who were there on Saturday might hear a little resonance of what I shared there. But we have a bigger group today, and I'll try to throw a twist in perhaps, so it remains interesting for you. Yeah. So the legendary founder of Buddhism is a figure called Bodhidharma, who was an Indian sage who had an awakening experience with his teacher, who was an Indian teacher, and was destined, in dreams. His teacher realized that he was fated, Bodhidharma was fated to travel to China and to share a particular form of Buddhism with the Chinese. And sure enough, according to the legend, this figure, who we call Bodhidharma, traveled to China and introduced a certain form of Buddhism there, which became Zen. So there's some question as to whether Bodhidharma was a real person or not. It might have been a legendary person. A legendary person. What's a legendary person? A fiction, perhaps. But the way I see it, and I think many others see it this way too, is there is enough kind of coherence and internal consistency to the figure of Bodhidharma and to the message and the expression and the teachings of Bodhidharma and to the influence of Bodhidharma as others in subsequent years and centuries referred back to the things that were said at this time, that it makes plenty sense just to work with the archetype that has come down to us. As much as we consider Shakespeare to be a person, even though there's ample evidence that it perhaps was not the person we think he was. Our poet and English professor is chuckling over here, and I don't know whether you think that's insane or whether you think maybe this is okay. Oh my, the owl has an opinion on that. Are we okay? We still? Okay. Are we still being heard online? Okay, very good. Yeah, so according to the lore, this Indian sage traveled to the court of the emperor of China and had an exchange, and really threw him for a loop with Bodhidharma's responses to his questions. So I won't go into the earlier ones. Some of you know them, but the emperor was so confused because the form of Buddhism that he appeared to be presenting was radically different from the Buddhism that he understood, that he said, "Who are you? Who is this standing before me?" And Bodhidharma responded, "I don't know." Hey. So this is the primary expression of the non-knowing that we're practicing ourselves. Right? Bodhidharma, basically, it's like, well, who are you? So it's like, who am I? Who am I? His answer to who am I was, I don't know. That's the root question right there. the root question for non-knowing self. Who am I? Now, it's kind of interesting because that question sort of unfolds kind of like a tree. Who am I is the root question, but then we have some, if we envision that as like a tree, that now we've got some boughs that are related questions about the self. And can we bring non-knowing to those questions in the same sort of way? So some of those questions are, why are you doing what you're doing? What's really important to you? Why did you do that? Okay. These are also deep questions. You know, not ultimately maybe as radically deep as who am I? That's the root question, but also very deep questions. And now we have another koan which touches on these questions. Jizo's not knowing is most intimate. Master Jizo asked Hogen, "Where have you come from?" "A pilgrimage aimlessly," replied Hogen. "What is the matter of your pilgrimage?" asked Jizo. "I don't know," replied Hogen. "Not knowing is the most intimate," remarked Jizo, and at that Hogen experienced great enlightenment. Now the appreciatory verse to this koan, which comes right after the main case. I just want to share this too, it's very nice. Right now, investigation replete, it's the same as before. Utterly free from minute obstacles, one comes to not know. Short is short, long is long. Cease pruning and grafting. According with high, according with low, each is even and content. A family's manner of abundance or thrift is used freely according to circumstances. Fields and lands excellent, sportive, one's feet go where they will. The matter of 30 years pilgrimage, a clear transgression against one's pair of eyebrows. Now there's a couple of really nice turns of phrase here that I want to focus on. Utterly free from minute obstacles, one comes to not know. Short is short, long is long. Cease pruning and grafting. The pruning and grafting, what is that? It's shaping your life to accord with your ideas of your life, right? Right? Oh, I don't like this part. Let's cut this off. Oh, I want to be a better person. I want to be more educated, or I want to think better of myself. I'm going to graft that onto the tree of my life. All right? And then we keep doing this over and over, pruning this part off that we don't like, adding this part, grafting this on that we do like. And what are we left with? Some kind of Frankenstein plant. Right? Yeah, not so beautiful. And you're like, oh, look at me. No. Probably doesn't feel very good too, right? To be that organism. But it's, I'm going to get the words right, clearing away minute obstacles. Utterly free from minute obstacles, one comes to not know. Okay. So what are these minute obstacles? This is what we now call conditioning. Okay. There's not a lot of use of any kind of word of conditioning, that term conditioning in the Zen literature. It's been, I think, extensively translated as conditions or conditionings in the primary, the Pali canon. the earlier Buddhist texts, but Zen doesn't use this word, doesn't have this language for conditioning. I think it has something to do with specifically the Zen culture that emerged in China with the Taoist backdrop, and then something about the Japanese. Did I say Japanese or Chinese? I meant Chinese Taoism and that culture, and then the Japanese culture. That was a language of conditioning, wasn't so much there. And I like that. But that's how we can understand it, is our deep karmic attachments to the way we see the world and we see ourselves. Those karmic attachments that condition the way we see ourselves and the world, that kind of organize the way we see the world and see ourselves. So these minute obstacles, it gets very subtle and very deep in terms of how we organize our experience, how we organize our self-sense. And I reflected on Saturday during session, and I will again here, just how thick and deep these conditionings go for ourselves. It's often said that for those of you entering this path, maybe in the first few years, if you really knew what you were getting into, you probably wouldn't do it. Because we come in usually with some ideas about what our practice is going to be like. And we come to see that we're actually have to give up much more than that. And it's harder than we thought, harder than we ever imagined. But it's also true that the gift and the liberation is far more wonderful than we can imagine as well. That's for sure. But this is right at the heart of this particular expression of non-knowing self. Because Jizo asks Hogan, why are you doing this? You know, what's the matter of your pilgrimage? Why are you traveling around practicing? Going to all these monasteries and teachers? Why are you doing that? Right? So we all have we have our own answers to that, really. You know, we should investigate what our answers are to that. I put it out during the session, you know, why are you here? And everyone here, you know, I'll put it out to you now. Why are you here? Why do you come to practice here? So after a few moments reflection, you know, something might come to you. I hope something does come to you. Right. And oftentimes, what comes to us in practice is some form of I want to relieve suffering. You know, I'm coming with an affliction that I feel that I want to relieve. And perhaps there's also a yearning to relieve suffering for others that goes along with that. It's great. It's an excellent, excellent motivation for entering this path. And at the same time, it's based on a certain understanding of what suffering's all about, where it comes from. It's actually based on perhaps not a full understanding and a conditioned understanding of where that suffering is coming from. So you have ideas about that. And if you hold to those ideas, there's going to be a lot of pruning and grafting ahead. Right? Those ideas can manifest as minute obstacles to your own freedom, to your own path of awakening. So the non-knowing, practicing non-knowing, involves being conscious of your motivations, as conscious as you can of your motivations. Being as conscious as you can of your self-definitions, of who you believe yourself to be. And we have opportunities every day to investigate those things. Usually, the most potent opportunities to look at that are ones where we're off balance, when we're outside of our comfort zone. Because when we're, in our comfort zone, then those definitions are sort of temporarily working, potentially. So they aren't perhaps challenged or investigated. The practice of non-knowing self is always to turn in and investigate what's going on with me right now. Am I fully present? Am I fully present? Hogan's response to Jesus' question is so immediate. All of these koans, it's always an immediate expression, and that's why when students come to me and those who are practicing koans with me, the immediacy of the response is a big part of it. As soon as sometimes if you take 1 second to think about it, and I see that 1 second, I already know you haven't really seen it. And I, over many years, experienced that with my teacher, going through hundreds of koans with him. I knew that a moment's hesitation and the bell was coming. The bell was coming. He was very compassionate with me, so he would help me. He wouldn't wring me right out the way some teachers, did. It's like, no, come back. Sometimes that happened, but he'd work with me as well. Yeah. What else? Something else I wanted to. Oh yeah. So going back to Master Gyodo, who's actually the master who said not knowing is most intimate here. In walking and sit, so he also said this as his teaching. In walking and sitting, just hold to the moment before thoughts arise. Look into it, and you'll see not seeing. Then put it to one side. Hold to the moment before thoughts arise, look into it, but then put it to one side. So don't attach to that moment before thoughts arise. Don't attach to that. But you will experience the moment before thoughts arise with strong practice, zazen. When you direct your efforts, this is Gyodo now, again. When you direct your efforts like this, rest does not interfere with meditation, and meditation does not interfere with rest. This is really the most intimate. Okay? Because so often we create a division within ourselves. We're always creating all sorts of divisions within ourselves. But this is one that we can intimately connect with on the inside in our zazen. Okay? It's like, am I meditating or not? Am I meditating or not? Okay? That voice, which is evaluating practice. Okay? Right there is the knowing mind at play, which is really keeping you from being intimate with yourself. It's up there. Meditation, rest. Put those aside and just be present with what's going on with yourself, somatically and mentally, as one. Don't position yourself with an investment in the thought as the thinker of the thought and hold to that position. Let's really experience your present moment. That's intimacy. That's the intimacy. It's so fresh, right? To just say, okay, I'm tired. Am I meditating or not? It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That's extra. Just be what you are. Be bored. Be tired. Be confused. Be agitated mind. Be anxious. Yeah, without an idea of what good meditation is. Yeah, so these obstacles are minute, because we can see when we look in the real magnifying glass of Zazen, we can see how those thoughts arise and how we're invested in those different viewpoints, right? And then we get off the cushion and we interact with people, and it becomes much less conscious. We're much less aware of those things. So that all goes a bit below consciousness. But with practice, it becomes much more available to our consciousness. And then we can interact in large consciousness. I'm not going to say full consciousness, but we can have a lot of consciousness, a lot of awareness of the way these things are arising for us, the way they're affecting us, moving through our body, affecting the way we see things. Minute obstacles. And with practice, they fall away, really do. And what's left is a real fresh, intimate experience of yourself, moment by moment, just accepting whatever it is that comes up. That's really intimate. That's really intimate. It's fully accepting yourself. Fully accepting yourself. You don't have to be a particular way. You don't have to be a particular person. And then somebody comes and asks, "Who are you?" And in a fully grounded and fully self-accepting way, you can say, "I don't know." It feels good. It feels good. Okay, practice with full acceptance, full self-acceptance. Be intimate with self.